This is a production of WKNO Memphis. Production funding for Behind the Headlines is made possible in part by the WKNO Production Fund, the WKNO Endowment Fund, and by viewers like you. Thank you.
Pension and benefit reform, the state of the Memphis airport, and more tonight on Behind the Headlines. I'm Eric Barnes, publisher of the Memphis Daily News. Thanks for joining us. We're joined tonight by a number of people to speak about the state of the airport. Later, we will be joined by some folks talking about pension reform and local government. But let me first introduce Kemp Conrad, Memphis City Council. Thank you for being here.
Thanks for having me.
Charlie Goforth from the Memphis Chamber and the Aerotropolis Initiative. Thank you for being here.
Good to be here.
Jack Sammons, Chairman of the Airport Authority. Thank you for being here.
Glad to be here, Eric. Thank you.
And Bill Dree, Senior Reporter with the Memphis Daily News. Let's start with, there are lots to talk about with the airport. I'm going to put you on the spot, Jack. You're relatively new into the